Hello, my name is Teresita, Blanco, the Artsy Sister. We're continuing with the Lovers Pentacle 2, Chapter 3, Two of Swords. Kain told an edited version of last night's events, and he gave his father the camera with all of the photos and videos he had taken. Jack, extremely happy, went to his bedroom to save the latest pics in his computer, and he also set aside tasteful images to send to his mother Esther. Esther was in New York with her only daughter Elizabeth, and she wasn't due to return to Florida for at least 2 more months. Kain finished his breakfast and he looked at his cell phone again, and he smiled when he got a message from Carina, and she needed his help to throw away some furniture, and he could take whatever he liked. Kain drove out to Carina's house and he knocked on the door more out of habit. He had the key to her house and he was allowed to come and go as he pleased. Instead of finding Carina amicable, she seemed to be in a foul mood. The first thing she said when she saw Kain was, "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "The truth about what?" asked Kain, fiddling with the house keys nervously. "The truth about your mother, Bella. I had to learn from Eugenia that your mother almost killed you, and I guess a friendship doesn't mean much if you never trusted me with your deepest secrets," said Carina, poking at Kain in his chest. "I'm sorry, Carina. It just isn't easy for me to talk about my mother, and when I'm with you, I completely forget about her, but with Eugenia, it is different. She reminds me of my mother a lot. Both have the same laughter, and last night she killed me because she was angry at somebody else," explained Kain, "so I broke up with her." "Breaking up with Eugenia is not going to cure you of your woes," said Unla, Carina's mother and Kain's shrink. "You need to process those negative emotions in order for—" "I'm not in the mood to talk about my mother, Dr. Garcia," said Kain, looking at the door. Unla guessed that her patient was preparing to bolt, and Unla showed Kain the items that Carina wanted to throw away, and Carina needed to make room for Bruno's things, and among the items she needed to throw away was her dollhouse. "Why are you throwing away Nana's house?" asked Kain, petting the dollhouse. "I need to make an office space for Bruno," said Carina. "Why doesn't he just share his office with Rodrigo?" said Kain. "Both work in the same law firm, and his house is only a stone's throw away." Ola and her sister Barbara live in 2 houses that share a spacious garden in the middle. Barbara's house was a mansion, while Ola lived in a cozier little house that was easier to clean. Ola preferred the smaller house. Carina, enamored with the idea, brought her dollhouse back into her bedroom, and she was still not ready to throw it away. And while Kain was busy rummaging through her loot, she went to pester her cousin Rodrigo, and she walked past the garden into her aunt's kitchen, and Barbara was talking with a designer in charge of remodeling her kitchen. Carina entered Rodrigo's bedroom, and after graduating, he tried to leave the nest, but eventually he returned home to be with his family. The life of a lonely bachelor conflicted with his sensitivities, and as far as room decor, his mother didn't allow him to have an opinion. Neither Rodrigo minded. The mahogany furniture was complemented by blue accents, and Rodrigo agreed to share. Carina spoke to her cousin, and Rodrigo agreed to share office space with Bruno. The cousins went to Rodrigo's office to rearrange the furniture, and while they were moving the table, Rodrigo asked the pertinent question. "Does Bruno know that he's moving in with you?" asked Rodrigo. "I haven't asked Bruno yet," said Carina, giggling, "and he practically lives with me, and he's always finding excuses to sleep in, so why not make it official?" "I still want you to verify things with Bruno before I rearrange my office space," insisted Rodrigo. "Call him right now." "All right, fine," protested Carina. She dialed up Bruno, and she frowned when he didn't answer right away, and she was about to test Bruno when she saw his car parking right in front of her house. She ran towards Bruno, and he was expecting to get an earful for not answering the phone right away. And Bruno had a mental list of all of Carina's triggers, and she had the bad habit of going from 0 to 100, and it flattered Bruno's pride that Carina was so crazy about him. And the defense attorney Bruno was built like a tank thanks to his previous life as a football player, and he spotted a Che Guevara beard in order to endear himself to his proletarian clients. Carina opened the door for Bruno before slobbering his face with kisses, and Bruno sighed wearily, seeing that Carina was in a good mood for a change. And he had been walking on eggshells ever since his sister Rebecca told Carina that he was a pathological liar. Bruno didn't like being honest with honor, and he especially disliked being honest with himself. And it pained him that his girlfriend was learning to see through his lies, and his current strategy was to lie with his silence. Carina, there's something I need to tell you, said Bruno, getting out of the car. But me first, insisted Carina. Bruno, I want you to move in with me. Oh, said Bruno, surprised. But isn't that too soon? If you don't want to live with me, just say so already, said Carina, folding her arms. It isn't that I would love to live with you, Bud, said Bruno, trying to think of a good lie. But, insisted Carina, gesturing her arms. Since Bruno wasn't saying anything, Carina tried to guess at the problem, and she took Bruno's arm and she guided him to the bedroom. Look, I've already made room for you, and this drawer is empty, and I threw out half my closet to make room for your clothing. That was unnecessary, Carina, said Bruno. I don't own that many articles of clothing, though I do need an office space. I am way ahead of you, said Carina, smiling gleefully. Rodrigo agreed to share office space with you, and it will be just like going to college all over again. Bruno immediately stopped showing opposition to the idea of moving in with Carina, and he was enamored with the idea of sharing office space with his former roomie. And on that same day, Bruno rented a U-Haul, and Kain ended up inheriting Bruno's plasma television. Bruno preferred to watch television with company. Kain returned home with the television and the unwanted furniture, and he placed the spare TV in his father's bedroom. The extra drawers he placed sparingly in the sparsely decorated guest room. And when he finished with his work, he realized that he was completely alone in the house. He found a note on the fridge. Jack was hanging out with his childhood friend Salazar, and he wasn't going to return home till tomorrow. Kain went to the back garden with a kind of fancy feast, and it was too early for him to be feeding his favorite stray cat, but his misery desperately desired company. Kain habitually fed whatever wild animal passed by his backyard, and instead of his stray, a ginger-haired cat manifested from within the bushes, and his cat had a collar. It belonged to his neighbor. He left the food on the floor while he waited for the cat to approach, and Kain tried to pick the cat, but it fled as soon as he touched its soft fur. Again he tried to summon his friendly neighborhood cat, and he pierced through the darkness with a flashlight. And Kain's backyard had over abundance of ferns, mini palm trees, and 3 majestic gumbo trees. And in the morning those features were beautiful, but in the darkness the shapes became distorted. And there was an ungodly smell in the corner of the yard, and the source of the smell led Kain to his dead stray cat. The stray cat was old. It was bound to drop dead sooner or later, and with no one at home, it fell on Kain to bury the cat, and he tried digging a hole with a shovel, but the ground was hard, and the top soil very thin, and with no way to bury the cat, Kain considered burning it, but this idea seemed too impractical, and he wanted to be rid of the creature immediately, and with the darkness encroaching and the smell growing more nauseous by the minute, Kain went to the garbage can and he placed it over the cat, but the act of touching the dead creature was nauseating. He ran back into his house and he frowned when he noticed that he could still smell the decomposing animal, and he pondered whom he could call at such a late hour to help him deal with the problem. He called Carina first, but when she answered the phone, he was able to hear that she was mating. Kain called his father next, but Jack didn't answer. And then he went to call Uncle again, but he decided not to. Uncle Gain had recently complained about chest pains, and Kain didn't want to provoke him a heart attack. He tried calling Alexia Siddhanta for her help, but they too were indisposed. Siddhanta suggested that Kain call the humane animal removal to have them dispose of the body. The problem was that this service was closed at this time. Kain moved the garbage can closer to the cat, and he tried shoveling it up, but all he managed to do was remove the plastic bag that concealed the decaying visage. A gust of wind fanned into his face the pungent smell, and this made him throw up. And just when he was about to fall into despair, he heard a knocking on his door. Kain ran to the door hoping to find anyone to help him with the problem, and the person outside the house was Michael, Eugenia's father, and he wanted to pay Kain to get back with his daughter, and he felt that Kain was a good influence on the girl. Kain didn't care why Michael was there, and he buried his head into Michael's shoulder to cry unconsolably. Michael, completely unperturbed, kept his hands lower while he waited for the awkward moment to pass. And once Kain was in control of his emotions, he explained to Michael the nature of the problem. Michael laughed coolly before going to the garden to dispose of the creature, and he unceremoniously took the cat inside a black bag before tying a knot to keep the smell out, and he dragged the garbage can to the curb, and he opened the lid to perfume the interior. And with his tasks out of the way, he entered the kitchen to wash his hands. I'm sorry, said Kain meekly. Was that your first time seeing a dead body? Asked Michael coolly. I have hunted animals for food. I have seen their bodies. I am a cop after all, but I never had to touch a creature in mid-decomposition. It is different when you have to touch it. It is different when you have to smell it for a prolonged period of time. And that casts the smell worse than dead people, said Kain with a trembling in his voice. Michael looked through Kain's humble kitchen in search of a stiff drink, and since he didn't find one, he poured Kain a soda. He averaged it out with a whiskey bottle he carried inside his coat. And Kato said to the tribute, and then he said, I miss my grandpa so much. He was the only person I could truly rely on. How's Eugenia? How do you think Eugenia is, said Kain dryly. She is heartbroken. You are the first man that has ever broken up with my girl. And frankly, I see you left her for a stupid reason. You need to understand women, Kain. They are weak and feeble creatures who live in constant fear of running into a predator. The kiss she gave you was just a primal response. She wasn't earnestly trying to do you harm, and the fact that she reacted that way to your touch just means that she doesn't trust you yet. Eugenia isn't the only person who is a victim in this story, said Kain before drinking more of his soda, though I suppose a person can only act based on his experiences. Every person has a baggage, Kain, said Michael, clicking his glass with Kain. You can either accept this or you can live your life alone as a hermit. Michael finished his drink and he made his way towards the door, and he smiled when he felt Kain's hand on his shoulder. Michael lingered a little longer while Kain made dinner for the two. At the end of dinner, Kain prepared an apology pastry for Eugenia. Michael gave Kain the recipe of Eugenia's favorite dessert, stuffed croissants, and since he had a basic baking supply, Kain was only able to stuff them with peaches, strawberries, dulce de leche, and chocolate. With the gift box completed, Michael drove Kain to his house, and he was tempted to offer Kain money to coerce him to stay, though he decided against it. The first time he had given Kain money, he had left it on top of Eugenia's nightstand. Might like that Kain wore his heart on his sleeve, and this weakness made Kain predictable and easy to manipulate. When Michael arrived home, he felt when he saw Santiago's car outside, and the mucho was back. Michael guided Kain to the back of the garden to have him meet Doro, this new Chihuahua, and the two Chihuahuas and Poodle lived in a comfortable little house outside the mansion, and O'Neill was a little bit of a knee freak, so the dogs always had to sleep outside. And physically, O'Neill was as skinny as the cigarette she smoked, and her face and voice was reminiscent of Queen Elizabeth, and the only color found on her face were her thin rosy lips and her dyed blonde hair. Eugenia went to the window to see why the dogs were barking, and she saw Kain talking with her father. And based on her Tupperware, Eugenia knew that Kain had come to reconcile. And whenever Kain felt he had done something wrong, he always apologized with home-cooked pastry. And if he wanted to show his affection, Kain cooked a romantic meal for two. And since Eugenia started dating Kain, she had gone up 10 pounds. At the moment, Santiago was just getting out of the shower, and in the morning he had apologized to Eugenia for everything he had said the night before, and the two finally laid their cards out on the table, and after finally coming to terms, the old friend had reconciliatory mating. Eugenia looked at Santiago before looking at Kain, and she thought of what Santiago had said while drunk, and since she was still angry at being compared to her lecherous father, she decided to return with Kain. Eugenia ordered, "You need to leave right now." "But baby," asked Santiago, all hugging Eugenia's slender frame, "I thought we were finally going to give us a chance." "This was a mistake," hissed Eugenia. "I don't want you here. Go." Santiago saw Eugenia's eyes turning towards the window, and when he looked outside, he frowned when he saw his competition roaming the garden. As a final gambit, Santiago dug into his jean and he brought out a bag containing Eugenia's favorite poison. "If you truly cared about me, Santiago, you wouldn't be enabling my self-destructive vices," said Eugenia, scratching her shoulders. And she was furious at Santiago for relying on such a cheap tactic. "I am so sorry, Eugenia. I'm not trying to use your weakness against you. It is just that this is all I have to offer you," said Santiago, hiding the drug from sight. Eugenia had a look of a panther ready to strike. "I take the risk so you don't have to talk to dangerous individuals to get your fix. I love you, Eugenia, and I will do anything for you." "I don't know, Santiago. It is just, I don't know," said Eugenia, digging her claws into her flesh. The familiar giddiness was returning. "I don't know. Giving a person what they want is not the ideal way of loving someone, and right now what I really need is someone to keep me grounded." "If you want to get clean, you have my full support," Eugenia said, Santiago doing a complete 180. "And we can start looking at rehab centers immediately, and we will go through this together." I don't need to get clean. I'm not a junkie, said Eugenia. And she heard the front door opening. In a panic, she said, Santiago, just go already. Please go. All right, she said Santiago while Eugenia was pushing him out the window. And before jumping out, he asked, is it bigger than me? He doesn't do steroids, so what do you think? Asked Eugenia, giving a sly smile. Is he better than me? Insisted Santiago. The door started to open, and before he got his answer, Eugenia pushed him out the window, and Santiago landed with a gracefulness of a former gymnast, and he stretched his hands before laughing at his perfect landing. And what's the joke? Asked Kain, entering the room. I want to laugh too. Eugenia turned as white as a sheet, and she didn't know how much of the conversation Kain had heard. And he took a step forward, and she took a step back, and Eugenia relaxed when she saw Kain's eyes starting to water. He's such a crybaby. And Kain took a deep breath to regain control of his emotions, and he asked with a slight trembling in his voice, have I ever given you a reason to be afraid of me? I'm sorry, I'm just a little jumpy, said Eugenia, laughing nervously. From sleeping with Santiago? Asked Kain. Eugenia lowered her head, feeling ashamed. We have broken up, so it doesn't count, and I baked your croissants, and I tried really hard to mimic your mother's recipe, and I tried one, and they are delicious, and I hope they put a smile on your face. Eugenia accepted the humble tribute, and it wasn't like her mother's croissants, but they were close enough. And Eugenia snuggled up against Kain, and she said, Kain, if you keep feeding me like this, I'm going to turn into a whale. A little meat never did anyone any harm, said Kain, petting Eugenia's ginger hair lovingly. And you look perfect, and there isn't a part of you that I would change, and I wanted to apologize. And I broke up with you for a very stupid reason, and ever since my accident, it doesn't take much for my cup to overflow. And if you don't want to be my girlfriend anymore, I will understand. If I didn't want you as my boyfriend, I wouldn't have thrown the other guy out the window, said Eugenia, sighing with relief. Would you like to? Started saying Kain. I'm kind of sore from the other guy, said Eugenia. We don't need to sleep together to enjoy each other's company. Would you like to watch a movie with me instead? Asked Kain. I would love to, said Eugenia. And Kain went to the bathroom to change into his pajama, and Eugenia changed to linens before activating her home theater. And she threw into the projector a new Adam Sandler movie called Anger Management. Kain always found amusing in Sandler's comedy, and the couple got a good laugh out of the flick. And her boyfriend fell asleep around 10, and she was Kain's sleep for half an hour. And having recently slept with Santiago's, Eugenia was mentally comparing both men. Santiago approached lovemaking with calm, passionate confidence, while Kain had a sweet, childish way of going about it. And Kain hesitated too much and was clumsy at times. Santiago just has more experience because it doesn't work, said Eugenia yawning. And I need to get around to training my police officer. And it's such a pity that such a handsome man doesn't know how to use his best attribute. And Eugenia fondled Kain's best attributes, and once she finished toying with it, she closed her eyes to sleep. An hour before sunrise, Kain had a night terror, and in the dream world he was working as a mechanic, and this was his first part-time job. And he was always having fun tinkering underneath the automobile when an arm pulled him out of the darkness into the light. And Kain squinted his eyes in order to look at the giant man standing before him. Kain, good news, you got accepted to Harvard, said Grandpa Raphael. But I don't remember applying to Harvard, said Kain, shrinking into himself, and as he did, the nightmare of Grandpa Raphael got taller and taller. Raphael opened his mouth and he began to speak gibberish, and at a certain point Kain said, But Grandpa, I don't want to be a lawyer, and I'm not as smart as you think I am. And I only get good grades because I pay attention and I do my homework, and I will never be the rich, successful person you want me to be. Raphael pulled Kain up by the shoulders, and he began yelling while shaking his grandson. And Raphael just as quickly dropped dead, and his body began to decompose at an alarming rate. And for the rest of the dream, Kain was trying to drag his grandpa to the cemetery while the man's body became more bloated and maggot-filled. Kain awoke covered in a cold sweat, and he rushed to the bathroom where he puked up his stomach contents. And he cleaned his mouth before returning to bed. And Eugenia opened an eye when she heard the noise, and she closed her eyes to pretend to be asleep. And she felt Kain petting her hair, and he kissed her on the forehead before returning to bed. The morning came. The morning came, and ever the early bird, Kain jumped out of bed, and he got dressed and he texted his father. Jack was not coming home till midnight, and to avoid going home to an empty house, Kain went to the kitchen to make breakfast. Eugenia's family awoke to the smell of bacon, and a starving Michael was summoned to the kitchen, and yawning he said, "We have a maid, Kain, in this house. We always skip breakfast." "So what are you telling me is that Eugenia won't eat the breakfast in bed," said Kain shyly. "She will like it, but only if you get the proportions right. And he has tried it time and time again to make breakfast just like my dead wife used to, but it's just not the same," said Michael. "Maybe it has something to do with the presentation," guessed Kain. "That was the first thing she tried." "And weren't there any family portraits in the fridge?" asked Kain. "And this is a bit of a need-free," said Michael, "and photos go in the photo album." The two maids smiled while they ate breakfast, and Kain brought her to Eugenia's bedroom, her brunch, and when she was fed and she got dressed and she went to the yard to pick up the dogs, and it was time for their afternoon jog, and the couple jogged with the dogs while listening to music, and at the end of their workout they kissed, and both were quite happy to have shared in that moment. "I work them extra hard on the weekend," said Eugenia, "and I can barely get them out of the house on any other day of the week." "Is your friend Jeremy good with dogs?" "I don't know," said Kain, but he leash walks his cat, so I assume he must know how to manage dogs. Coco, Lisa, and Misa are family, and I can just trust them to anyone, and the last dog walker we had stole Misa, and she waited for us to put up a reward to have our dog returned safely, and not that I'm accusing your friend of being a potential thief, but you never know. I want to see first how Jeremy handles my dogs, and if the dogs like him, then he can walk them from Monday to Friday," explained Eugenia. Once Kain had the interview secured, he called Siddhanta to inform him about the job offer for Jeremy, and Siddhanta said, "Thank you, Kain, and I owe you one, and I'm going to send Jeremy over now, and that way he will be able to get started working to this Monday." Kain hung up, and Eugenia commented, "He does know that this is an interview, and there isn't a guarantee that Jeremy is going to get the job." "Siddhanta is the type of man who always assumes that everything's going to work out for him," explained Kain. "I like his optimism," said Eugenia, smiling. "You could learn a thing or two from Siddhanta." The lovers jumped back to the house with the dogs, and Kain made refreshments for the visitors, and by now all of the family members were awake, and they were gathered in the living room to interview Jeremy. And Kain heard the distinct sound of Siddhanta's chopper, and Dorothy, Eugenia's younger sister, sprung from her seat when she heard the bell ring. Dorothy was a freckle-faced brunette with satirical amber eyes, and she blushed an exquisite pink when her eyes fell upon the infamous Siddhanta. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. Bye-bye, God bless.